My name is Edward, and today I learned something very important about the human body. It can betray you in the most dramatic, ridiculous, and humiliating ways possible. And sometimes it fixes itself in the weirdest ways too. Let me tell you about the story that still doesn't make sense to me. It started like any other normal morning. You wake up, check your phone, ignore responsibilities, and then nature calls. Nothing unusual. No warning. No dramatic music. Just me walking into the bathroom thinking I was about to have the most average moment of my day. But no. The universe had plans. I sat down, and suddenly, something exploded in the back of my head. Not metaphorically. It felt like someone snapped a rubber band inside my skull. The pain shot straight up the back of my head like lightning. I froze. My body locked up. I didn't scream, but in my mind I was already writing my will. I've had migraines before. I've had headaches. This was different. This felt like my brain pressed the emergency button. I stumbled back to bed holding my head like I was in a Shakespeare tragedy. My girlfriend saw my face and immediately knew something was wrong. She brought me painkillers, and the pain slowly faded from I am dying to I am uncomfortable but still alive. For 6 hours I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, okay, that was weird. Then the second miracle happened. Out of nowhere my nose turned into a waterfall. Not a normal sniffle. Not a polite runny nose. I mean a full-scale evacuation. Mucus poured out like my sinuses had been holding a grudge for years and finally decided to quit. And then I smelled something. I hadn't smelled properly in months. My nose had been useless. Food tasted like disappointment. Flowers were just decoration. Life had no scent. Suddenly, I could smell everything. Coffee, soap, my pillow, my girlfriend's shampoo. Even the trash smelled like a miracle. I sat there thinking, did I just reboot my head by going to the bathroom too hard? It felt like my body accidentally fixed a bug in its own software. For one day, I felt like I had superpowers. I walked around sniffing random objects like a confused dog. I smelled old books and got emotional. I smelled food and almost cried. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was stupid. But then the fear came. Because pain like that doesn't happen for no reason. I started Googling. That was my first mistake. Words like aneurysm, stroke, and brain bleed appeared on my screen. Suddenly my nose superpower didn't feel funny anymore. It felt like a countdown timer. Down. I remembered something important. My mother had died from a brain aneurysm years ago. That memory hit me harder than the headache ever did. I imagined her last moments. I imagined myself lying in bed thinking everything was fine while my brain quietly planned something horrible. So I went to the hospital. Hospitals have a special way of making time disappear. You walk in, and suddenly 5 hours become 5 minutes or 5 centuries. Nurses check your blood pressure. Doctors look concerned but calm, which is the scariest combination. They talk in soft voices like they're speaking to a bomb. They did scans. They asked questions. They poked me. They shined lights in my eyes like I was a broken robot. Finally, the doctor came back and said, "Good news. You don't have an aneurysm. We don't know what happened, but you're alive." That was both comforting and annoying. I asked, "So why can I smell again?" He said, "Honestly, no idea." That was the official medical answer. No aneurysm, no brain bleed, no explanation. Just one strange bathroom event that turned me into a scent-powered human for a day. When I got home, I ate leftover meatloaf like a champion and felt grateful to be alive. And I learned something important. When your body does something insane, don't ignore it. Don't romanticize it. Go to the doctor, even if it feels stupid, even if it goes away. because sometimes the difference between a funny story and a tragedy is one hospital visit. But that wasn't the only story that week. A friend of mine, let's call her Sarah, had a much worse experience with people than with her body. Sarah was pregnant. Not just pregnant, exhausted, emotional, and dealing with a sudden medical emergency. One day her hand started swelling out of nowhere. Not a little swelling. I mean balloon-level swelling. Purple. Tight. Painful. Like her arm was trying to become a different person. She told her husband, "I need to go to the hospital." He looked at her arm and said, "Yeah, that's bad, but I have martial arts training tonight." Let that sentence sink in. She asked him to watch the kids so she could get medical help. He asked if her mother could do it instead because he needed training for his mental health. He changed clothes. He went to class. He talked about getting a massage afterward. Meanwhile, Sarah cooked dinner with one working hand and tried not to panic about her unborn baby. When he came back, ate food, showered, and went to bed, he finally asked, "So, how's your hand?" It was 3 times bigger. Only then did he say, "Maybe go to the emergency room." That moment broke something in her. Not her hand, her trust. Later, she admitted something painful. This man had cheated in his last marriage and blamed his ex for everything. She hadn't known when they got together. Now she was seeing the same pattern. Her pain didn't matter. His comfort did. People always talk about red flags. This was a flashing red siren with sound effects. Sometimes medical emergencies don't just reveal problems in your body. They reveal problems in your relationships. A partner who chooses training over your health is not a partner. That's a roommate with excuses. And then there was the funniest story of all. A 17-year-old nursing student went to a doctor's office to fill out a form. The fee was $160. She was broke. Like checking couch cushions for coins, broke. She sat in the waiting room and started crying uncontrollably. Not cute crying, ugly crying. Nose running, eyes burning. Full emotional collapse. The doctor called her in and asked what was wrong. She told him she didn't know how she would survive financially. The doctor silently waived the fee, which made her cry even harder. Then she stood up to follow him, dropped her tissue, bent down, and launched her face directly into the wall. Her snot and tears left a visible imprint. She laughed. The doctor tried not to. The wall had seen things it could never forget. That moment was embarrassing, but also human. She was stressed, young, scared, and grateful. Life hit her literally in the face. Doctors see blood. Doctors see illness. But sometimes they also see people breaking down in the funniest ways. By the end of all these stories, I realized something. The body is weird. Life is unfair. People can be disappointing. But sometimes strangers show more kindness than family. Sometimes pain becomes a story instead of a tragedy. And sometimes, you poop so hard you can smell again. That's part 1 of these medical Reddit stories. And trust me, it gets stranger from here. After hearing all these strange medical stories, I started to believe that hospitals are not just places of healing. They are places where humanity reveals itself in its rawest form. Fear, love, stupidity, kindness, and sometimes cruelty, all packed into waiting rooms with bad lighting and uncomfortable chairs. The next story proved that perfectly. There was a woman who was about to be a bridesmaid at her sister's wedding. Everything was prepared: the dress, the shoes, the hairstyle, the forced smile for photos. But there was one detail her sister could not accept: 2 tiny medical devices on her arms. She was a type 1 diabetic. She wore a glucose monitor on one arm and an insulin pump on the other. They were small, barely noticeable, and most importantly, they kept her alive. Her sister looked at her in the mirror and said, "Can you remove those for the wedding? They'll ruin the photos." Imagine hearing that. The thing that protects your health being called ugly. The woman tried to explain that these devices were not accessories. They were not jewelry. They were not optional. Removing them would mean finger pricks, injections, stress, and the risk of her blood sugar dropping dangerously low in the middle of a wedding ceremony. Her sister complained to their mother. Their mother sided with the bride. Friends joined in too. Everyone said the same thing. It's just one day. Just compromise. But here's the truth. Health is not something you compromise for aesthetics. When people say just one day, what they really mean is, your discomfort is less important than my pictures. She felt betrayed. Her own family saw her condition as an inconvenience, not a reality. Thankfully, someone stepped in. Her younger brother found out and exploded. He confronted their mother and sister and told them how cruel and ignorant they were being. Then he called their grandfather, the man paying for the wedding. Grandfather drove an hour just to tell his daughter how disappointed he was. He said if they didn't apologize, they could pay for the wedding themselves. Suddenly, apologies appeared like magic. They came to the woman and said they were wrong. They said they didn't understand how serious it was. They agreed to let her wear the devices and even suggested covering them with flowers or a shawl. In the end, she walked into the wedding wearing her dress, her medical equipment, and something even more important: respect. That story taught me something brutal. Sometimes people don't realize how hurtful they are until power or consequences step in. And sometimes family needs to be reminded that love is not about appearances, it's about protection. Then there was the most uncomfortable story of all. A man went in for surgery on his legs. Varicose veins, simple procedure, local anesthesia. He was awake, cold, nervous, naked under a thin hospital gown that didn't fit his tall body. 2 doctors walked in, thinking he was fully sedated. One of them looked down and said, "Wow, big guy, tiny equipment." The other laughed. The nurse panicked and said, "He's awake." Silence. No apology. No explanation. Just the sound of surgical tools and awkward breathing for the rest of the operation. Imagine lying there while strangers who are supposed to save you make jokes about your body. He didn't scream. He didn't complain. He didn't leave. He froze. Because sometimes shock paralyzes you more than pain. Later he laughed it off, but deep down that moment stayed with him. Not because of the joke, but because of the betrayal of trust. Doctors are human, but professionalism is what separates humans from monsters in moments of vulnerability. That story reminded me how fragile dignity is. When you're naked on a table, you are not just a patient. You are a person hoping to be treated like one. Another story made me laugh and feel sad at the same time. A young woman went to the doctor's office to fill out paperwork for nursing school. The fee was expensive. She had almost no money. She sat in the waiting room and started crying like her life had collapsed. The doctor asked what was wrong. She said she was only 17 and didn't know how she was supposed to afford life. The doctor waived the fee. Her relief turned into more tears. Her nose became a faucet. She dropped her tissue, bent down, slipped, slammed her face into the wall. She left a snot and tear imprint like a ghost of embarrassment. She laughed because what else can you do when life humiliates you in front of kindness? Sometimes pain becomes comedy. Sometimes generosity turns into chaos. And sometimes walls remember you longer than people do. Then came the story of responsibility. 3 friends were walking in a park with dogs. One of them decided to run to catch up with another friend. She tripped and dislocated her shoulder. Later, she blamed the dog and demanded the owner pay hospital bills. No one saw exactly what happened. The dog didn't bark, didn't react, didn't move strangely. She had chosen to run. That's when the real issue appeared. Not injury, but entitlement. Accidents happen. Gravity does not care about lawsuits. But the moment someone demands payment without proof, friendship turns into suspicion. Sometimes the real injury isn't the shoulder, It's the trust. As I heard more stories, one pattern became clear. Medical emergencies don't just test bodies, they test character. Who shows up? Who runs away? Who laughs? Who judges? Who stays silent? When pain enters the room, masks fall off. One man found out he could smell again after a bathroom miracle. One woman found out her husband loved karate more than her safety. One sister found out her family valued photos over her health. One patient found out doctors can be cruel. One teenager found out kindness exists. All of them walked away changed. And so did I. Because when you read enough of these stories, you realize something uncomfortable. You don't know who you really are until something goes wrong. You don't know if you'll be the person who helps, or the person who says, "I'm busy tonight." You don't know if you'll protect dignity, or laugh at it. You don't know if you'll choose love, or convenience. The human body breaks in strange ways, but human relationships break even faster. I started thinking about my own life. Would I leave someone alone in pain because I had plans? Would I judge someone for a device on their arm? Would I laugh at someone's humiliation? Would I walk past suffering because it wasn't my problem? These stories weren't just entertainment, they were mirrors, and that's what makes them powerful. Not the shock, not the humor, but the reflection. Somewhere out there, someone is lying in a hospital bed right now. Someone is crying in a waiting room. Someone is afraid to ask for help. Someone is being judged when they should be cared for. And maybe, just maybe, someone is discovering that after months of numbness, they can finally smell again. By the time I finished reading all these stories, I realized something strange. Every single one of them had nothing to do with medicine, and everything to do with being human. Because the scariest part of these stories wasn't blood, pain, or hospitals. It was how people reacted. Some reacted with love, some with fear, some with selfishness, and some with silence. There was one story that stayed in my mind longer than the rest. A man wrote that he once ignored a sharp pain in his tooth for days. At first, it felt like nothing, just a tiny cut on the gum. Then it became a burning ache. He couldn't drink cold water, couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep. Instead of going to the dentist, he told himself, "It'll go away." It didn't. One night, the pain exploded. Not a normal pain. A pain that felt like someone drilling into his skull from the inside. He spent the entire night walking around his apartment, holding his face and bargaining with the universe. By morning, his face was swollen. He finally went to the dentist. The dentist looked at the scan and said, "This infection has been building for a while. You waited too long." They did a root canal immediately. After it was done, he said something that stuck with me. I was grateful for pain. Not because he liked it, but because it forced him to act. Sometimes pain is not punishment. Sometimes pain is a warning. And the most dangerous thing is not pain. The most dangerous thing is pretending nothing is wrong. Another story was about a man who fell down his stairs while living alone. He said his first thought wasn't, "Am I hurt?" It was, "What if nobody finds me?" He lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was how stories ended. Alone, quiet, ridiculous. He stood up slowly, checking every bone like he was doing inventory on his body. That night, he ordered a railing for his stairs. Not because he was scared of falling again, but because he realized how fragile independence is. We like to believe we're invincible until gravity reminds us we are not. It made me laugh, but it also made me uncomfortable. Because how many people get hurt alone and just disappear into silence? Then there was the story of embarrassment that turned into strength. A young man went to the doctor for a skin check. He had to undress down to his underwear and sit on a paper-covered bed waiting. He said he felt like a museum exhibit. The doctor came in, calm and professional, looking at every mole and mark like it was a science project. The patient felt exposed and awkward, but the doctor didn't see a body. He saw a checklist. That day, the man learned something simple. Doctors don't judge bodies. People do. The shame we carry is usually ours, not theirs. But not all stories were kind. One woman wrote about being ignored in the emergency room because she didn't look sick enough. She sat there for hours while her pain worsened. When they finally examined her, she had internal bleeding. She survived. But her trust in the system didn't. She said the scariest part wasn't the injury. It was not being believed. And that made me think about how many people walk into hospitals already scared and walk out feeling invisible. Then there was the story of the husband who chose training over his pregnant wife's swollen arm. That one haunted me. Because it wasn't about martial arts. It was about priority. Love is not what you say when everything is normal. Love is what you do when something goes wrong. He said he needed training for his mental health. She needed him for her physical safety. Only one of those could wait. And he chose wrong. That moment didn't just reveal a bad decision. It revealed a pattern. Sometimes emergencies don't create problems. They expose them. Another man wrote about waking up from surgery and realizing the doctor had joked about his body. He said he laughed it off later, but inside, it changed how he saw himself. It made him more aware of how vulnerable patients really are. When someone is unconscious, sedated, or afraid, they trust strangers completely. That trust is fragile, and once broken, it never fully comes back. The funniest stories were also the saddest. Like the teenager who cried over money, got kindness, then smashed her face into a wall. Or the man who regained his sense of smell after the strangest bathroom experience in history. Those stories were funny because they were absurd, but they were also honest. Life does not heal you in a straight line. It trips you, humbles you, embarrasses you, and then hands you a small miracle. As I kept reading, I noticed something else. Most people didn't remember the diagnosis. They remembered the moment. The nurse who held their hand. The doctor who dismissed them. The partner who left. The stranger who helped. The silence in the room. The joke that hurt. The kindness that saved them. Memory is emotional, not clinical. I started to imagine all these people in one room. The man who could smell again. The pregnant woman with the swollen arm. The diabetic bridesmaid. The embarrassed nursing student. The patient mocked during surgery. The girl who tripped over a dog. The man who fell down the stairs. All sitting in one waiting room, telling each other their stories. Some would laugh. Some would cry. Some would stare at the floor. And all of them would realize they survived something. Not just a medical event, but a moment where life reminded them they were fragile. And that's when it hit me. These stories are not about sickness. They are about what happens when control disappears. We plan our days. We schedule our lives. We imagine futures. Then suddenly, a headache hits. A hand swells. A wall meets your face. A doctor makes a joke. A partner walks away. And everything changes. In those moments, character speaks louder than words. By now, I wasn't laughing as much. I was thinking, what kind of person do I want to be when someone is scared? The one who says, I'll come later? Or the one who says, I'm here now? What kind of person do I want to be when someone looks different? The one who hides them from photos? Or the one who stands beside them? What kind of person do I want to be when someone is embarrassed? The one who laughs? Or the one who helps them up? These stories were not entertainment anymore. They were lessons. And the biggest lesson of all? Life is unpredictable. Bodies fail. People disappoint. But kindness is always a choice. You don't need to be a doctor to heal someone. Sometimes you just need to show up. Sometimes you just need to listen. Sometimes you just need to believe them. Sometimes you just need to stay.